All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Be seated. Mr. Court Officer, please call the case.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is the file number case CBC 2020-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Esteli, Recep Selimi, and Yakub Krasniqi. Thank you, Your Honors.
I note the accused are all present in court today. Today we will continue to hear the evidence of Thaçi defense witness 1DW-007. Before we start hearing the evidence of the witness, there are some preliminary matters the panel would like to address. On 30 October 2025, the SPO requested to add or replace currently admitted versions of several documents with recently disclosed revised versions of the admitted exhibits. There are 7 individual requests. The defense and the victim's counsel will have an opportunity to comment on each one of them after all the requests have been read. First, the SPO requests to replace P00515_ET77 with 008879-ET_extract_F03214, which was disclosed in Disclosure Package 1815. The panel notes that the new extract contains only the pages of the item that were tendered by the SPO in F03114-A02, Item 2, and admitted by decision F03214. Second, the SPO requests to add 066769-066769-ET to P01616, which was disclosed in Disclosure Package 1814. The panel notes that the new item provides a translation of the witness's handwritten annotations on P01616. Third, the SPO requests to replace P0310_ET with SPOE0005647-SPOE0005647-ET revised. The item was disclosed in Disclosure Package 1793. The SPO submits that the revised item accurately reflects the admitted original and that page SPOE0005647 at the 4th paragraph includes a part that was missing from the admitted translation in P00310_ET. The panel notes that the word added to the revised translation is bouillard. Fourth, the SPO requests to add 125893-0/1289/02-TR-ET, which was disclosed in Disclosure 1757 to P04221/P04221.1. The panel notes that the new items are the English and Albanian transcripts of a video admitted in decision F03214 as P04221, together with the corresponding Associated Press archive file, which was admitted as P04221. 4221.1. Fifth, the SPO requests to replace P01712.1 underscore ET with 06119-TR -ET Part 1 Revised RED. The revised item was disclosed in Disclosure Package 1793. The SPO submits that Package 16, line 6 of this English transcript was revised to accurately reflect the admitted Albanian original. Sixth, the SPO requests that P01086 underscore ET slash P01086 underscore AT be replaced by 061427-03-TR revised and 061427-03-TR revised -ET, which were disclosed in Disclosure Package 1813. The SPO submits that the new items more accurately reflect the admitted video, including the correction of an accurate reference to Cali, C-A-L-I, on page 1, which should be Celik, C-E-L-I-K. Seventh, the SPO requests that page SPO E00231-058 of P01091 underscore ET be replaced by page SPOE 00231-058 of SPOE 00231037 -SP0 SPOE 0023118 ET underscore revised. The revised page was disclosed in Disclosure Package 1814. The SPO submits that paragraph 2 of the item was revised to accurately reflect the admitted Albanian original. So, I almost got my voice back before I had to read that all to you again. Any objections to these additions and corrections?
Your Honours, we do have to double check a few of them, and I would ask if we could just have time over the break to do that. We don't expect there to be any issue, but there are just one or two that do need to be reviewed.
I believe we will have a break at 11:30, or at 11, I'm sorry, to 11:30. So during that time period, you can perhaps have time. Will that give everyone adequate time to check? All right.
Yes, I'm grateful for that.
Thank you,
Your Honours.
thank you, Mr. Dixon. We will now continue with the evidence of Thaçi Defense Witness 1DW-007. I remind the parties and participants of the measures authorized for this witness in filing F03558 pursuant to Rule 107. Madam Court Officer, please bring the witness in. Good morning, General Clark. Oops. General Clark, today we will continue with your testimony. I remind you to please try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you don't understand a question, feel free to ask counsel to repeat the question or tell them you don't understand and they will clarify. Also, please try to indicate the basis of your knowledge and the facts and circumstances upon which you will be questioned. I remind you that you are still under an obligation to tell the truth, as stated by you in your solemn declaration. Please also remember to speak into the microphone and wait 5 seconds before answering a question, and then try to speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. And once again, if you feel the need to take a break, just let us know and we will accommodate you. We continue with the cross-examination by the Special Prosecutor's Office. Please give them your attention. Mr. Helling, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, General. How are
Morning.
you? So if the court officer could please pull up 1D 214, page SPOE 0021261. Witness, you were talking yesterday about...
I'm not getting, oh, okay, I wasn't getting a feed, but go ahead.
Yes, you can hear me now. Yes. You were talking yesterday about having, as NATO had to be prepared for anything that could happen. NATO had to be planning for the prospect of a Serb counterattack into Kosovo. That's correct, right?
Say that again. What's the question?
The question was whether NATO had to plan for the prospect of a Serb counterattack.
No, NATO did not have to plan, and I was given no instructions to do such a plan. But it was incumbent upon me, as the commander overall, to warn my subordinates to be prepared in the event of an eventuality that was unforeseen, just as it happened at Pristina Airfield.
So with that in mind, I would like to go to something in General Jackson's book that you were shown in your preparation session.
Yeah.
It's on this page. It's a little further down. I understand you were shown the third paragraph on the page. So it's this exchange with General Jackson. You're quoted as saying the following: "When the Serbs come over, I'm going to do everything I can to finish the fight," West told me on the VTC from Mons. This time, he said, "we will go the whole way," presumably all the way to Belgrade. Clark talked a lot about Serbs coming back in. He said that we should welcome a Serb attack. Now, this is discussed a lot in your preparation session. Just first, was this an exchange that you had with General Jackson?
You know, honestly, I don't remember it. And if I do remember anything like it, it wasn't characterized this way. Jackson and I had a different appreciation of the situation. And so I think it's fair to explain to the court what this difference was. It was a difference in national perspectives. Jackson had been involved, he was a Brit, he had been involved in the situation in Ireland. He'd seen it. I'd been involved in the situation in Bosnia. I'd seen that up close. I knew what the Serbs were capable of, and I knew what the consequences would be. And from the very beginning, I think there was a difference in our perspectives on this. And I think that was sharpened by the discussion at Pristina Airfield. I never read Jackson's book, but I do know that, and I don't want to disparage a colleague who's no longer with us, but I think there's some, let's say, creative interpretation of what I said here.
Now, when you were shown this, you responded as follows in your preparation session, and I'll just
Actually, I was never shown this bottom paragraph. I never saw it. So my response was to the upper paragraph,
Okay.
the one that began only a few days later. And I would not characterize it as obsessing. I would say it was my responsibility as the commanding general in the overall strategic operation to be prepared for unforeseen contingencies.
So what you said in the preparation session connects to what you just said now, that your responsibility was to ensure that, should the Serbs attempt to invade Kosovo, they would be met by a prepared NATO force. However, you did realize Milosevic still harbored malign intent, and he believed he may attempt to strengthen his forces in Montenegro. You
That's right.
reiterated, sorry?
Correct.
That's correct.
That's what I said.
Yes, and then just to finish, you reiterated that you never saw any real indication of the possibility of Serb reinvasion. You wanted to make sure General Jackson was prepared to deal with anything that happened. We've been told that's in response to the third paragraph on this page. The quote at the beginning, when the Serbs come over, I am going to do everything I can to finish the fight, just is that something you said?
It may have been something I said, because from the outset of this, I made clear to the NATO command that we were going to do what we could to succeed in this operation. And from the beginning, I applied the lessons I had learned from Vietnam, from my military experience, from the planning of Haiti and Bosnia participation, that when you go into an operation like this, you should seek decisive outcomes.
And part of the mandate for this operation was to deter renewed hostilities, correct?
Say the question again. I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Part of the mandate for this operation.
Which operation?
The operation you were just describing in your previous answer, the international security presence in Kosovo.
Okay.
Part of that was to deter renewed hostilities.
That's exactly right.
If we could now go to SPOE 00405-847 to 00405-880. And we'll just stop for a moment on the first page. General, you actually gave multiple testimonies before the United States Senate Armed Forces Committee in 1999 and 2000. Is that correct?
I do remember testifying.
Yes. So you can see on the page here, this is one of those, and it's one that you, on 1 July 1999. And there's a specific answer that you gave that I wanted to ask you about. It's on page SPOE 00405-851. And so you are asked around the middle of the page how long an international force would be present in Kosovo. And this is how the beginning of your answer is recorded. Mr. Chairman, I think it's not possible at this time to give a definitive answer to the question. So let me sketch out some of the considerations that I think bear on the issue. First of all, there is no peace settlement yet in Kosovo. We're essentially in there under a ceasefire. So what you were entering in Kosovo wasn't a peace settlement, it was a ceasefire. Correct?
That's the way I characterize it, yes. A ceasefire plus a withdrawal of the Serb forces under a UN mandate.
And there still wasn't a peace agreement even by mid-September 1999, correct?
That's technically correct. And there wasn't really until, I think, 2008 when Kosovo achieved independence.
And in your position as Saker, you remain concerned about Serb generals threatening to come back into Kosovo even after September 1999. Isn't that right?
I remain concerned about Serb potential aggression in the region, not only in Kosovo, but also in Montenegro. There was a reason for that.
So when you were talking yesterday about Serb generals giving disinformation, not wanting to admit defeat, there was still a real concern on your part that they would come back.
Let's put it this way. If you had asked me, were they coming back, I would have said no. If you'd asked me what my responsibility was, it was to make sure they did not come back. and therefore it was my responsibility to make sure that the command understood the potential risk and to make sure that there was no complacency on the part of the commanders working for me, including Mike Jackson.
I actually asked you neither of those questions. What
under-
I asked was, was there a real concern on your part that they would come back?
I know you didn't ask me those questions, but counsel, if you'll give me Mr. Prosecutor, if you'll give me the understanding of where this conversation's going. I understand that what you're attempting to show, what I'm attempting to explain is why I made the statements I did. Not because there was a state of war and continuing conflict, but because of the lack of resolution, because of the continuing information I was receiving about Serb statements and other things, and the belligerence and anger in the Serbs military from having left, and the fact that Milosevic was a clever, canny character who had many ways to operate. So if you're asking me to make a judgment 25 years, 26 years later, was there a chance that Serbia would come back in? It's easy to say, of course there was no chance Serbia was going to come back in. And when Mike Jackson wrote this book somewhere 10 or 15 years after the event, of course everybody knew they weren't coming in. But at the time, I would have been remiss in my responsibilities had I simply said, gentlemen, it's over. Let's relax. This is a state of peace, and go about our business. That would have been an improper attitude for me as a commander in the field.
I understand that that's what you needed to project as a commander in the field.
Right.
My question is just about you personally. Were you personally concerned about the Serb generals threatening to come back?
I must have been somewhat concerned because I wouldn't have said anything. But on the other hand, it was my responsibility. Remember, this was when this conflict ended. It ended with the Russian attempt to discredit and destroy the NATO operation through the Pristina airport caper. We never have learned really the truth behind this. We know that Colonel General Ivanov, who was one of the leaders at the time, was decorated in the Kremlin for this operation and considered it a great success. But in fact, what happened, and thanks to Mike Jackson on the ground, is that the Russians were sort of bottled up in the airfield. So what they had was a momentary crisis of command. But it was a crisis in command that was very, very significant, because at the time that the operation kicked off when the Russians crossed the Drina, it was early morning on Friday, June 11th. And shortly thereafter, we began to get indications through intelligence sources that this wasn't simply a one-battalion renegade force, that there was a malign plan behind it. And that plan stemmed from with Russian airborne divisions preparing to be moved into Kosovo. So as that added a much more sinister context to it. Now, after the incidents on the 11th of December and the settlement, then, as I recall, Secretary Albright, Secretary Cohen were in Finland for some time trying to negotiate this out with the Russians. I was on the phone several times, as I recall, with Secretary Cohen explaining that no, the Russians are not legitimate actors. The Russians are there with an axe to grind, and please don't upset the NATO operation and the plans that have been laid by making extra accommodations after Moscow's tried to disrupt the operations. I don't remember all the details of these conversations. Maybe Secretary Cohen would, but the point was that there was an unsettled period that went on for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks afterwards, during which these other incidents occurred. So we knew that there was a certain dissatisfaction, let's say, further east with the outcome of the operation. And this also coincided with the rise of Yevgeny Primakov and Vladimir Putin inside Russia. Primakov had been recalled from exile. He was at that time the foreign minister.
You're kind of answering a question that wasn't asked.
It's true, but I think it's important
Well,
that the court understand the context in which I, as the strategic commander, not the man on the ground.
Just a
the
second,
strategic commander.
General, he's going to have to ask you questions and you have to answer them. And then defense counsel has a chance to have another go. So
Okay.
they'll get a chance to
I see.
delve into some of those issues that maybe you thought should have been asked but weren't.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and General, just to focus on exactly the statement that I'm interested in, if we could go to DHT 10293 to DHT 10336. And this is, I believe, consistent with what you were saying at the beginning of your last answer, but I just would like to confirm it for the record. I'll wait for the court officer to pull it up on the screen. You can see this is another hearing of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee, and you are there. And if we go to page DHT 10335, and this is also this is actually a discussion about the Apache helicopter deployment, but the part of the answer I was interested in was here, where you said, yes, sir, that's correct. And of course, at the time, we had no idea how long it was going to be, but in retrospective, as I look back on it, of course, the other things is I am still concerned about the Serb forces. We still got defiant Serb generals out there threatening to come back into Kosovo. That's testimony that you gave in February of 2000, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, we would ask to admit the pages shown of the U.S. Senate hearings that were just used with the witness. From the July 1, 1999 hearing, it would be the first page, which would be SPOE 00405-847, and then page SPOE 00405-851, and then from the hearing that's currently on the screen, DHT 10293, and then DHT 10335.
Any objection?
Your Honor, if we can have until the 11:30 break, I just want to research whether a Senate hearing is considered a legal proceeding, which would convert this to a statement for purposes of 153 to 155.
Well, we've already done that research. This is not a statement taken in the context of
Mr.
law
President, can I have
enforcement.
a chance to review it, and then we can argue on it if it needs to be argued, but
Do you have any more questions on this subject?
We have no more questions about these Senate hearings,
Yeah.
but our argument would be that this is similar to parliamentary hearings that have been admitted at other places in this trial. I can give an example of P942, which is, again, not exactly the same kind of hearing, but this is not a hearing taken in the context of a law enforcement investigation.
Well, we'll give counsel the opportunity to take a look before we rule on it. So yes, you may have until the break, the half-hour break.
So, Your Honor, would these items then be MFI'd for now?
Yes, they will be.
Your Honors, the SPOE 00405 847 to 00405-880 in particular pages SPOE 00405-847 and page 00405-851 will be MFI'd with the number P04515, and for the ERN range DHT 10293 to DHT 10336, and in particular pages DHT 10293 and the page 10335 will be marked for identification with P04516. Just to clarify the confidentiality of the classification for the P04515 currently classified as confidential, and MFI P04516 currently classified as public. Thank you, Your Honors.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
We would say that both of these can be public.
Excuse me, I'll rule on that when I decide on the admissibility. Go ahead.
Understood. And the document can be taken off the screen. Moving to a new topic, General. You said that you viewed the violence in the summer and fall of 1999 as a very personal conflict of neighbor versus neighbor for which the KLA leadership was not responsible. You said that in your statement, right?
That's right.
And this was shown to you yesterday, the PBS NewsHour, the KLA's calls for a multi-ethnic society that you considered to be genuine. I mean, just to begin, you were talking there about a lack of evidence of KLA ethnic cleansing, correct?
Correct.
If we can now put up on the screen 1D 387. This is a statement from a newspaper called Shikuli, and I don't believe it was shown to you previously by the Thaçi defense, but it has a quote of yours in it that I wanted to ask you about. It's been asked to other witnesses in this trial. You're talking on August 14, 1999, and it says in relevant part, Clark said that the leaders of the KLA have supported their calls for the Serbs to remain in the region. I will not point my finger at the KLA. Their leader has been very cooperative with us at senior levels, the American general said for journalists in KFOR headquarters. Some international officials have said that the KLA is the initiator of attacks against Serbs, that they have expelled 170,000 Serbs from Kosovo. General, this statement that you're giving that's reported here, this is also about a lack of ethnic cleansing evidence on the part of the KLA, correct?
Well, I had no evidence that the KLA was behind this. I had the contrary indications.
Right. And when you say this in that answer, you're referring to ethnic cleansing, yes?
I'm referring to the statement about the 170,000 Serbs allegedly expelled from Kosovo.
So your remarks about the KLA leadership are in relation to those 177,000 Serbs
That's
leaving
right.
Kosovo. Now, the questions I want to ask now, they are not about the broad wave of violence and house burnings and so on in summer 1999 Kosovo. I only want to focus now on the KLA targeting people for arrests and detention. The article can now be taken off the screen. General, you spoke about how you seldom attended JIC meetings. Do you know if concerns about KLA arrests and detentions were ever discussed at those meetings?
I don't recall.
Do you know if the KLA came to KFOR to report any crimes committed by its members for investigation?
I don't recall that.
At least until the UNMIK police apparatus became established, KFOR was prepared to investigate such crimes, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to now turn to your August 1999 visits to Kosovo. And Your Honor, because some of the documents here are covered by Rule 107 restrictions for the same reason they were in private session yesterday for direct, we would ask that we move into private session to discuss them again.
Private session, please, Mr. Court Officer.
Your Honors, we are in public session. Thank you.
Thank you. And Your Honor, I note the time. Is it still the court's intention to take a 10-minute break? It could be now.
I'm sorry, we'll give you a 10-minute comfort break.
Okay, thank you.
We're
All rise.
adjourned for 10 minutes.
All rise.
Molimo ustanite. Predsjedavajući, izvolite, sedite. Molim vas, uvedite svedoka u sudnicu.
All right, we'll continue. Mr. Helling, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning again.
Morning.
I wanted to now talk about something that you've discussed in various guises across your evidence, the multi-ethnic society promotion in Kosovo. And there's a particular area I want to ask you about in that regard. Where is the Preševo Valley?
Preševo Valley is over in, actually, it's in Yugoslavia, in Serbia.
And this was a sensitive area in the year after the war. Is that fair to say?
That's right.
Can you explain why?
There was a large, well, let's put it this way, it was a significant population of Albanians in this area of Serbia.
Now, Kosovo Albanians calling Preševo an Albanian area where Albanians had the right to live, statements like that would risk aggravating relations between the Serbs and Albanians in Kosovo, correct?
They would.
And similarly, Kosovo Albanians talking about how violence in the Preševo Valley could not be tolerated. It was dangerous at the time because this area was part of Serbia. Is that fair to say?
Ask the question again, please.
And similarly, Kosovo Albanians talking about how violence in the Preševo Valley could not be tolerated was dangerous at the time because this area was part of Serbia. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure if it was dangerous because I think they had a right to talk about the impact of Serb actions on Albanians in a neighboring region.
Well, then why don't we go to, if the court officer could pull up SPOE 4001 5904 to SPOE 4001 6230 -et rev-partial-combined. And in this regard, I note that this same ERN is applied to two different items. One of them is P4497, and one of them is a 94-page version of the entire translated exhibit. It's the latter we want to pull up on the screen. So the 94-page version of that exhibit, and specifically SPOE 4001-6149. In general, as this is being pulled up, you know an individual by the name of Klaus Reinhardt.
Yes, I do.
And who was Klaus Reinhardt?
He was the successor to Mike Jackson in K4.
And you were working with him in that capacity after he became the K4 commander.
That's right.
He made a diary that we have had translated, and there's an entry from 10 March 2000 that mentions you, and I would like to show it to you and ask you a question. And I'll wait until it's up on the screen. So again, the specific page for the court officer is SPOE 4001-6149. So that's a little ahead of the entry. So 6149. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Court Officer. So this is the entry. Now, General, before I start reading, is it too small on the right side of the screen to see?
No, I can read it.
Okay. So, General Reinhardt is talking with Hashim Thaçi at a press conference about the Preševa Valley. And he says the following. He starts, "My message is brief. I am deeply concerned about the recent events in the Preševa Valley. The situation on the border between Kosovo and the Preševa Valley could quickly escalate into a conflict affecting the entire region. This is not in the interest of the local population, KFOR, or the international community. We therefore condemn in the strongest possible terms any use of force in the area." And then if we go to the next page, we can see Hashim Thaçi's statements at this same press conference. Thaçi takes a completely different view. He accuses the Serbian side of renewed genocide and expulsion. He paints a grim picture of the situation of the refugees he has just seen, alleging that they had to flee on foot over the mountains with their last possessions. I think he must have been in a different film than I was. He then speaks of the suffering of the persecuted Albanian people who are now no longer willing to put up with anything. Not a word about distancing himself from the UCPMB, not a word of reassurance, quite the reverse. Twisted, false statements, and propaganda. I am boiling with rage, but I cannot intervene in front of the rolling cameras. As soon as we are out of the room, I confront Thaçi. He acts completely surprised. It almost renders me speechless, but I tell him that I feel he has deliberately and maliciously betrayed me. He counters that he was speaking as a Kosovo Albanian politician. I told him that I never want to do another press conference or similar event with him, and that I will limit my cooperation with him to the minimum necessary. This does not seem to bother Thaçi. He has made his national points, which he expects will secure him the approval of the Albanian population. I then call the Sakir and tell him that I feel I have been clearly duped by Thaçi. and will never appear with him in front of a microphone again, as the man is simply not to be trusted. General Clark is also angry, as Thaçi had promised him something completely different. General, do you remember this event as described by General Reinhardt?
Yeah, I do remember vaguely this event.
And is General Reinhardt's description of it accurate to the best of your recollection?
Well, I wasn't there, so I don't know the full extent of it. But I do know that what we had was a transition of the KLA from being a military organization in the resistance to oppression to individuals seeking out a political future for themselves in the country of Kosovo. We were lucky, if I could extend this in this question, we were fortunate that we had Ibrahim Rugova waiting, and there was a political movement that was extant in Kosovo when we entered. And that political movement reemerged with the Liberal Democratic Party of Kosovo and Ibrahim Rugova, as I remember it. So Thaçi was taking a different view and setting himself on a different course. But I also remember reading that actually there was violence against the Albanians in Prosecutor Valley.
Thank you. Your Honors, we would tender this entry of General Reinhardt's diary and propose that it be added to P4497. The entry, so the 2 pages, which would be SPOE 4001-6149 to SPOE 4001-6150.
We will object as to relevance as to both the substance and the timing of the entry.
With respect to W04868, the Prosecutor Valley was discussed at great length in that witness's testimony. In particular, a speech that Hashim Thaçi gave after the charged indictment timeframe, which was saying things similar to the one that prompted the reaction of General Reinhardt in his diary. So General Clark's evidence on this is relevant to substance, and that speech was found to be relevant to timing, even though it was after the indictment period as well.
The 2 pages are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. These 2 pages will be added to already assigned exhibit number P04497. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. And the document can be taken off the screen. General, we'll turn in a little bit to the meetings that you had with the KLA, but I first want to talk a little more generally about what information you had from them. From the beginning of 1998 to the end of the air campaign, how many times did you visit Kosovo?
I'd have to go back and check my records.
There aren't any visits in that period mentioned in Waging Modern War. Did you visit Kosovo during that period? Can you remember?
So I did not visit prior to the start of the air campaign. It was a part of Serbia. I wasn't exactly, I didn't expect to be welcomed there. I had talked to the Serb generals, as I indicated, in late October of 1998. In 1999, we ran the air campaign, so I certainly wasn't going to go in there between the Raychok massacre and the end of the air campaign. And I don't remember how many times I visited after the air campaign was over.
Okay, that answers my question. Isn't it true that the KLA's early actions had them condemned as terrorists in the international community?
I think there was a dispute on this. I remember that Ambassador Bob Gelbard called the Jashari family terrorists, but it was also, he was rebuked by U.S. leadership, and the statement was corrected.
If we can now pull up SPOE 00406-262 to 00406-262. General Clark, this is an interview that you are reported as having given on 9 March 1998. So this would be just after
Okay?
the Jashari incident. And you say the following: we condemn violence against people who express their political orientation in a nonviolent way. We also condemn terrorist methods that are being used in order to achieve certain goals. So you're yourself one of the people that was connecting actions going on at the time in Kosovo to terrorism, yes?
I was condemning terrorist methods.
And NATO was not able to engage with the KLA directly until after the air campaign because they'd been labeled as terrorists.
I'm not sure that that's correct.
I'll show something else in a moment about this, but for the moment, can we admit this article, which would be SPOE 00406-262 to 00406-262.
Any objection?
No objection.
SPOE 00406-262 to 00406-262 is admitted.
And it will be assigned exhibit number P04517, currently classified as confidential.
That can be public, Your Honor. And, Your Honor, would you like to reclassify P4517 now, or would you like to do it later?
Now, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. In that
Thank you, Your Honor. If the court officer could please pull up on the screen SPOE 00406-441 to 00406-504. And apologies, General. Klaus Naumann's statement wasn't supposed to be a cliffhanger, but if we could wait until the item's pulled up on the screen, I'll give the ERN again. It's SPOE 00406441 to 00406-504. And General, this is Klaus Naumann's testimony from the Milutinovich et al. Trial before the ICTY. And there was a passage in it I wanted to ask you about. If we could go to page SPOE 00406-463. Now, General, before I read the quote, what was Klaus Naumann's role in NATO up until early 1999?
He was the chairman of the Military Committee of NATO.
So if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, and actually it would be the previous page. And if we scroll down there, so, and Judge Bonamy, you can see at the very bottom of the page, is talking about the extent of the terrorist threat. And now if we can turn the page. Judge Bonamy eventually asked the following question in the middle there. Now, was there any NATO plan as to how the KLA might be dealt with in the environment you were trying to create, which was an environment of mediation? And Klaus Naumann's answer is as follows, and if we can scroll down to see it. He said, that, Your Honor, was our Achilles heel, if I can say this. We had made I'm saying this quite openly and bluntly, and I hope straightforward, in a straightforward way. We had made a mistake. We, I mean the political leadership of NATO in spring 1998, when we called the KLA a group of terrorists. That you find in NATO documents like the Foreign Ministers meeting. And having stated that the KLA is a group of terrorists, we had, I think, inadvertently paralyzed our own instrument to cope with them, since in NATO there was never any hope at all to contact terrorists directly. You need, for a decision, you need for the consensus of, at this time, 16 nations. And since some of the nations had a terrorist problem at their hands, they simply and flatly refused that we should ever talk to terrorists. And that was our Achilles heel. We simply had no instrument to rein in the KLA. Klaus Naumann here, General, he's accurately describing the complexities that NATO had engaging with the KLA, correct?
I think he is.
Now, Mike Durkee was one of your advisors during the war.
That's right.
And he was talking last week in this hearing about the meeting that you had in March 1999 with the KLA delegation that you discuss at paragraph 22 of your statement. And just for the record, this is transcript page 28078. He said there was a certain protocol for how foreign visitors would be shown around NATO headquarters in a kind of ceremonial tenor before meeting you. That's typically what happened when people visited you. Is that right?
That's right.
Durkee then said that you met the KLA in March 1999 in an airfield just outside the NATO headquarters. He said this was done because you wanted to get to know them and did not want to legitimize them necessarily. That's correct, isn't it?
As I recall, that wasn't the motivating force for meeting at the airfield. That was the only time that I could arrange a meeting, given my schedule and where Thaçi was. And I had to fly off that day. Now, Mike Durkee may have seen that as a wise move from the diplomatic standpoint to protect me from the wrath of NATO parliamentarians and other people. But that wasn't my concern. My concern was I wanted to meet them, and the airfield was the only way to do it given the timing involved.
I follow you. Now, you were asked on direct examination about that Barbara Larkin letter by the Thaçi defense. The terrorist label given to the KLA really foreclosed the international community agreeing to give them arms. That's fair to say, isn't it?
I'm not sure exactly what happened and how they got arms.
Well, isn't it true that arming the KLA would have been incompatible with the terms of the Rambouillet Agreement that the international community, yourself included, tried to convince the KLA to sign?
The KLA did sign the Rambouillet Agreement, but I think that there was recruiting done and there were weapons provided at some point after the Rambouillet Agreement was signed, when the Serbs refused to sign and we moved into conflict. I've never really received the details of that, but it's my impression that they received support from some quarter.
I'd like to go now to an interview that you gave in August 1999, and this is SPOE 00397623 00397-624, and it will be the first page. This is something reported by the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and it's an interview that you gave on 15 August. And I just want to show it to you to talk about the extent of direct communication that you had with the KLA. If we can scroll down the page. Now this is in 15 August, and it says, Clark said KLA officials didn't consult directly with Allied commanders during the war, which started March 24 when NATO bombed Yugoslavia to force Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic to end his ethnic cleansing campaign against Kosovo's Albanian population. We didn't have any direct communication with them, to the best of my knowledge, Clark said. So that's correct, isn't it, what you said?
That's correct.
It was actually important to keep some distance from the KLA during the air campaign. You actually didn't want to have direct contact with them.
That's not correct. That's why I talked to Thaçi. I actually asked him for help. So, you raise, you're at a critical point of history, values, ethics, democracy on this point, and I'm going to be told I can't address this by the court, but at some point, and Your Honor, you could just stop me when I run over my remit here. But at some point, people are fighting against repression. At some point, they go from being terrorists to freedom fighters. And at some point, the world opinion and consensus says, yes, people have a right to resist oppression. It's in the U.S. Declaration of Independence. And it's also just a common practice. And somewhere along this spectrum, from the time that in 1974, Kosovo was supposed to be a separate administrative state, Milosevic took that away and some heavy repression began. At some point, something that could have been called terrorism eventually became collectively defense of a people.
And Jen, I understand that. And I guess really, I'll ask the question in a different way with a page of your book. If we could go to Waging Modern War, DHT 11103 to DHT 11632, and it's page DHT 11483. I can show you what the basis of my question before was.
But may I, sir, refer back to that previous page?
Yeah, General, please wait for the question.
It would be DHT 111483. Thank you. And if we scroll a little bit further down the page, it's this passage that you wrote here. I warned that there would be other difficult decisions. The capabilities of the KLA would have to be fully exploited. We had scrupulously avoided direct contact with them in Albania. Political constraints on targeting must be relaxed. Access to Serbia through Montenegro and up the Danube must be blocked, and other forces might need to be deployed around the periphery of Kosovo. And it's that line in parentheses.
Correction, it's around the periphery of Yugoslavia.
Apologies, around the periphery of Yugoslavia. But the passage I'm interested in is the part in parenthesis about how you made a point of avoiding the KLA when you went to Albania. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the political guidance, I guess, coming out of Brussels. But if I could just return to the previous section where I just want to point out that it wasn't that maybe I was exceeding my mandate, but I wanted to get military guidance or military advice, military targeting from the KLA because it would facilitate the air campaign. And so that's what I asked of Mr. Thaçi. And the fact was, he couldn't provide it. He was not in command, and there was no effective command and control that I could see at that point.
One more. If we could please go to 128-928-03-TR-AT-ET, page 2. And there's an Albanian transcript of this as well. And we have a video of this as well, but we don't need to show it on the screen now. General, there's an interview that you gave for Kosovo Television in August 2020, and there's a short passage of it I wanted to ask you about related to these same matters, and it's on page 2 of the transcript. And just this line, just above the 441 timestamp. However, NATO did not have direct relations with the KLA. We simply did not get reports from them, and we could not know what was happening. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct.
So, Your Honors, we will hold this for admission. We will tender it at a later point, but we would like to admit the Cleveland Plain Dealer article, which would be SPOE 00397-623 to 00397-624. And we would also like to add page DHT 111483 to Waging the Modern War. I would also add, we did not tender the cover material for that book when we asked to have it admitted yesterday. Oh.
We're going through several different things. We first of all start with the Plain Dealer comment.
Certainly.
Any objection to the Plain Dealer article?
No.
SPOE 00397-623 to 00397-624 is admitted.
And will be assigned exhibit number P04518, currently classified as confidential.
And that can be public.
Reclassified as public. Now the second one.
So it would be DHT 111483, which was the page used in Waging Modern War, And just for clarity in the record, we would also tender DHT 11103 to 11108, which is just the cover material for the book.
Any objection?
Just 1 second, Mr. President. If we could just I need clarity on cover materials. 5 pages of what?
It's from the Thaçi defense scan. It's the cover, the title. It's the copyright information. We're just trying to tender whatever the minimum information is to understand that it's from this book.
Yeah, we have no objection.
So DHT 111483 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honors. In that case, this page will be added to P04514, and if my understanding is well, DHT 11103 to DHT 11108 that are recently tendered pages could also be added to P04514.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Mr. President, just for the record, other excerpts of this book are part of our bar table motion. So we would ask that those pages be added to this one exhibit, so to put it all in one place. Yes.
One exhibit is fine. We'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
We've already indicated this for the record. We had no objection to any of those pages tendered by the Thaçi defense in their bar table motion.
Okay.
This document can be taken off the screen. Now, General, we've been talking about direct contacts, direct relations with the KLA. But you also spoke in paragraph 25 of your statement about never being able to get any information from the KLA, even directly or indirectly, such that you couldn't use them as forward observers. Yes?
Yes.
And you make a connection between this and the KLA's lack of sufficient organization to be able to provide that information.
That's correct.
And you said it yesterday in response to the Krasniqi defense, and this is from real-time transcript page 76. The KLA might have known there was specific, really cruel Serb attacks on the population, but to be able to actually do a coordinated response, to report it to NATO, to do anything like this, no, it wasn't getting through. Is that still your evidence?
That's my recollection, yes.
Now, before continuing, when you talk about forward observers, you're asking about getting assistance on targeting. Is that right?
That's correct.
And do you agree that targeting information is quite time sensitive, such that what could be properly targeted was constantly changing?
Some was, some wasn't.
But it was in general, there was time sensitivity. That was a relevant consideration to getting the information.
Time is always important in evaluating information, but it didn't mean that the targets were simply fleeting targets. They could have been fixed targets. They could have been hideout locations and other things.
But you yourself were saying yesterday, even a fixed target, if a bunch of Albanian civilians are forced into that fixed target, that would change the targeting calculus. And in that sense, it was real-time changing. Correct?
I think I don't want to say that's correct. What I said was we didn't have good information on what was happening on the ground yesterday. And I cited this as an example, this friendly fire incident, where we mistakenly struck a holding area. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't have sought such information through the KLA if we could have gotten it. And if that information had been available, I would have gone back up the chain of command to Secretary General Solana. We would have arranged all the different, whatever legal niceties were required to be able to incorporate that information. But it simply, as far as I could tell, wasn't available.
And with that answer, we would like to go back to waging modern war. If the court officer could please pull up on the screen DHT 11103 to DHT 111632, and it's DHT 111472. In general, as this page is being brought up, you become aware of a KLA operation on Mount Pastrick in May 1999. You discuss this a lot in your book. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
I want to ask you a question about one of the pages where you're discussing that operation. As it's being pulled up, that operation was of some significance for NATO. That's true, isn't it?
So what I recall was that we did receive some rudimentary indication that there was an effort by the KLA to penetrate through from Albania into Kosovo. Now this was in addition to the whatever the holdout groups were of the KLA that had been isolated in various places around Kosovo. So yes, I was aware that there was an effort being made by the KLA to drive their force into Kosovo. And this was would have been useful to me because if the Serbs massed to attack this force, then I had a target. And the principal challenge throughout the air campaign was to hit military targets and not just empty buildings, but to actually hit ground forces so that Milosevic would be compelled to cease the ethnic cleansing.
And NATO wanted to help the KLA hold that mountain because of the exact reason you said, that it would draw out the Serb forces so that they could be targeted.
That's right. I don't know if it was to hold the mountain or not. I don't remember that phraseology. My recollection of it is that the KLA forces were attempting to move offensively, and that the Serb forces, as best as we could understand it, were attempting to mass against them.
So now if we can go to the page, which is DHT 11472. You scroll a little bit further down to the beginning of the first full paragraph. So you used the word rudimentary just now. In your book, you said by the morning of May 26, we had considerable information about the KLA's plans to attack into Kosovo. How did you get this information?
I had special forces people on the ground who had liaison with somebody, and I never figured out who it was by name they were speaking to.
And if we turn the page, it says, I was encouraging the close exchange of information between Task Force Hawk and the Combined Air Operations Center, CAOC, in Vicenza. Hawk was in direct contact with the Albanian army, who, in turn, were monitoring the KLA, and many targets were being passed to the CAOC. It sounds like you were getting KLA information indirectly from the Albanian army.
I assume that we were.
So when you said in your statement you did not get any indirect information from the KLA, that's not quite right, is it?
Yeah, that should have been clarified, yeah.
We would now like to go to a different exhibit, but if we could add these 2 pages now shown to Waging Modern War. So if we could add DHT 11472 to DHT 11473, and please add it to P04514.
Any objection?
No objection.
11472 and 11473 will be added.
Thank you, Your Honor. Those 2 pages will be added to P04514. Thank you.
If we could now pull up 077978 to 077982-ET revised 1, page 077982. 981. Now, General, you can see here, this is 1 April 1999. It's an order of the Minister of Defense of the Provisional Government of Kosovo. And if we just scroll to the bottom, just to orient you, you see that it's signed by Azim Sula, who is a gentleman you said you didn't know yesterday. I wanted to direct you to point 5. I appoint Agron Haradinaj as Organizational and Communication Chief and Coordinator between KLA, NATO, and Albanian Army Forces. So the KLA appointed someone specifically to coordinate with NATO and the Albanian Army. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
And if we could now go to P642. Specifically page SPOE 00231-512. And General, this latter document we seized from Jakub Krasnici's residence. And on SPOE 00231-512, you can see on the bottom there says section on cooperation with NATO. Cooperation with NATO was on a daily basis, as can be seen from the operational communications which we hold in the Operation Shigeta dossier. And then you also see that same gentleman, Agron Haradinaj, just above that under KLA Head of Organization. Did you know that the KLA was communicating with NATO every day?
I knew that we had, according to this, we had the American team located in Kukish. And I knew we had them. Now, how it was formally organized on the KLA side, I never saw that.
One last one, P787, page SITF 00009126. And to orient you as to this one as it's pulled up, this is testimony that Kadri Veseli gave in the Arben Krasniqi et al. Proceedings on 26 September 2011. And if we go to the page that I referenced, which would be page 3 in the document, you can see there at question 14, if we scroll a little further down. So it's a question, during the NATO bombing, did you see Mr. Limay again? Mr. Veseli responds, I have seen him during one meeting of the General HQ, during which we discussed the issue of communication. An issue that we often faced as an army was to collect information about the enemy positions and pass them on to our international partners. So the KLA was sending you this information, even if you may not have been directly asking for it. Did you know that?
Well, I knew apparently they were attempting to send it, yeah. Now, whether it was getting through and whether it was evaluated and so forth, I don't know, because the information I had was at the very end of this. In May, we knew about the Pastrick operation.
And we'll pick up that point after the break. But, Your Honors, the 3 documents we've just shown, the latter 2 are already admitted, but page 077981, which was that Agron Haradinaj appointment order, is not admitted. Another page in that same range has an exhibit number, and that's P02499. We would ask to add that page to P02499.
Any objection?
No objection.
077981 is admitted and will be added to P02499.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's noted.
And Your Honor, I note the time. We could take the break now. We will finish in the next session.
So we'll have a half-hour break now, General Clerk.
Okay,
We'll see you back here at 11:30.
thank you.
We're adjourned until 11:30.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated. Any objection to that? Those in the,
No, Your Honor. Thank you for the opportunity. There are no objections to those 8 corrections that were outlined earlier.
the MFI can be removed.
We're talking about two different things now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the documents Your Honor has identified right at the beginning of the session today, the 8 documents where there were corrections. We've double-checked those, and there are no objections to
No
those.
objection to those, all right.
But the other matters for Mr. Misitich to deal with.
Just for the record, we will object to that MFI exhibit.
Let me take care of this first one then. Having heard no objections, the panel orders CMU to proceed in the following manner. First, that P00515 underscore ET .77 be replaced by 008879 to 008881 ET extract F03214. Second, 066769 to 066769 ET will be added to P01616. Third, P00310 ET will be replaced by SPOE 0005647 to SPOE 0005647 ET revised. Fourth, 125.893-02-TR/125.893-02-TR ET will be added to existing exhibit P04221. Fifth, P01712.1 ET will be replaced by 060119-TR-ET Part 1 revised RED. Sixth, P01086 ET/P01086 AT will be replaced by 061427-03-TR revised and 061427-03-TR revised ET. Seventh, page SP0E00231058 of P01091 ET will be replaced by page SP0E00231058 of SPOE00231037 hyphen SPOE00231118 hyphen ET revised. This concludes the panel's oral order. Now, what's the basis of your objection?
Yes, with respect to P4515 MFI and P4516 MFI, our position is they constitute statements pursuant to the trial panel's oral order at transcript page 27162 to 27164. The prosecutor this morning suggested that they were not, that the Senate testimony was not taken pursuant to a law enforcement purpose. We tendered an exhibit from a civil lawsuit that was excluded on the basis that it constituted a statement. So whether it's a law enforcement purpose or not is irrelevant. The panel has held that all that is necessary is that the statement is testimonial in nature and was given in relation to legal proceedings. This statement, those two statements were given under oath in a Senate hearing. We consider that that is testimonial in nature and in a legal proceeding that is pursuant to the Senate's oversight responsibilities. And the reference by the prosecutor to Exhibit P942 is inapposite because that dealt with, that exhibit deals with parliamentarians speaking in Parliament. It is not an evidentiary hearing with a witness testifying under oath. Those were statements made by parliamentarians in Parliament. Thank you.
And, Your Honor, if we could just briefly respond to that. The definition given of this panel by a statement in FO 1380 RED, paragraph 12.1, is they must constitute or form part of a written statement of a witness taken in the context of a criminal investigation or proceedings. The ruling mentioned by counsel just now extends that definition to a civil proceeding. But this is neither. This is not a proceeding of the same kind. It is closer to a parliamentary hearing, and for that reason, this provision does not apply.
Mr. Mishetic, since you're on your feet, I'll use you. Can you tell us what would be the difference between the document now being offered and a document offered by you now admitted as Exhibit 1D290, which is the record of a Senate hearing that you put to Mr. Rubin, and you, just to help you remember it, put to him a specific passage of testimony of then Senator Biden?
Senator Biden is not a witness in that proceeding, so it's not testimonial in nature. It is a statement made by a senator in Senate. This is literally testimonial in nature. General Clark raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth and then was examined. So it's a fundamental difference, and it squarely fits in your definition. And if I may respond to Mr. Halling, nothing in the decision I cited says that you're now extending a criminal law definition of statement to civil proceedings. I literally am reading out what your definition is. It suffices that the concerned statement is testimonial in nature and was given in relation to legal proceedings. Full stop. Thank you.
We'll enter in order. Thank you. You may bring the witness in now. All right, we continue with the cross-examination. Mr. Helling?
Thank you, Your Honor. We will pick up what we were discussing just before the break, but I did have one follow-up question on something you said, and it's at real-time transcript page 42, where you were talking about the Rambouillet agreement, and I just had one follow-up question. It's in relation to this answer. The KLA did sign the Rambouillet agreement, but I think that there was recruiting done, and there were weapons provided at some point after the Rambouillet agreement was signed, when the Serbs refused to sign and we moved into conflict. I've never really received the details of that, but it's my impression that they received support from some quarter. Now, I appreciate if you don't know the answer to this question, and please let us know if there's any Rule 107, if there's any confidentiality restrictions to what I'm about to ask you. But are you able to confirm if the weapons provided to the KLA were provided by a government quarter of a NATO state?
I can't confirm that.
Because of the confidentiality reasons. That's my understanding of your answer?
No, I simply don't know.
Sorry, the council wishes to speak.
No,
No,
now you are.
I don't know the answer.
That's all the information that I need. Thank you. Now going back, you were saying just before the break that apparently the KLA was attempting to send information to NATO, but you don't know if it was getting through. I would like to go to SPOE 00406-592 to 00406-597. And actually, we can briefly start on the first page of the document just to show you what it is, and then we'll go to the last page. So you can see on the top, this is a briefing of the British Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, and you see the date of 9 April 1999, yes?
Yes.
If we go now to the last page, towards the bottom. So, question. There have been reports that the KLA is asking the West for help in the way of arms. What are your communications with the KLA, and have they asked you for arms, and if so, will you be supplying them? And this was Cook's answer. We have received a number of reports from the KLA over recent days in the last 2 weeks, and it is helpful to have their perspective on what is happening within Kosovo, but we have no intention of supplying arms, and to do so would be in breach of the UN embargo on Yugoslavia. So, General, the British seem to be getting the information to the KLA. You see that?
No, I don't see that. Just a second. Let me read it again.
Of course. I'll give you a moment to read the answer. It's in particular the first line.
Yes, okay. May I explain how I interpret this?
Please.
I'm sure there were statements by somebody saying they were the KLA knocking on doors and asking for help. That's a lot different than having a unified command and control system that could support NATO. And when we started this conversation yesterday, that was my understanding of sort of the genesis of this is, was there command and control? Someone asked me, I can't remember if it was you or the defense, to define command and control. And so, you know, the fact that there's communications like this and somebody says, help, help, that's not command and control.
General, my question was simpler than that. I just wanted to know if you knew that the British had been receiving a number of reports from the KLA.
I knew that they'd been receiving requests. I didn't know what the reports were.
If we can go now to maybe an American source, SPOE 00406-608 to 00406-620. General, you remember yesterday you were shown a video from Pentagon spokesman Ken Bacon.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
This is another briefing of his, and I'll wait for it to come up. This is 17 May 1999, you see there. If we now go to page SPOE 00406-611, scroll a little bit further down the page. So, a little more. Towards the bottom, yes, thank you. So you can see in the answer after the question that suggests his strategy is working, part of Bacon's answer is as follows. We don't have good figures on the number of troops that have been lost. We do have reports, anecdotal reports through KLA and other sources of units being unable to move because they're out of fuel or supplies. Obviously, some of the units are continuing to move, but there is a steady accretion of information that the attacks are working. So your Department of Defense was also, at least indirectly, receiving the same information. Is
Yes,
that right?
but there's a difference between, as you went through the campaign, what was the date of this again from Bacon?
It was 17 May 1999.
As it went from the 24 March start into the end of May and into the early June, and you quoted something from my book on, I think it was 26 May when we were looking at Mount Patrick. There was no question that everybody was struggling to get information out of the KLA. We had to have as much information as we could from the ground, and gradually we got more information. We were sucking it out in every possible way, but as I indicated in my statements yesterday, I think to the defense, I never got anything from Mr. Thaçi, who was, allegedly in charge. It wasn't coming to me. It was being extracted at lower levels from people in casual conversations. And I had the impression that my special forces guys that were in Kukish, I think I had a couple of guys up there from my U.S. Army Special Operations Command, Europe. I think those guys were basically kibitzing with people. I never got the impression that there was like a formal briefing. Come in here, we're going to show you the plan. I think they sort of worked their way in and got as much as they could. And the same thing with the targeting. That was my impression because I did go up there. I don't remember the date. I actually flew up to Kukish. I did the reconnaissance of the route we were going to invade on and so forth. I even brought the Minister of Defense from Albania with me on that trip. And so I was, doing what I could to, along with other people from NATO, to extract information from these people on the ground.
Right. SPOE 00406-266 to 00406-436. General, I understand your last answer and the distinction between not getting a formal briefing but nevertheless extracting information. What is being pulled up on the screen now is a 2002 report prepared for the U.S. Army by RAND. Are you familiar with RAND?
Sure.
Can you just explain briefly to the court what that is?
It's a government-funded research institution.
And you can see this is a report called Disjointed War. Are you familiar with this report?
Nope.
Okay. If we can go to page SPOE 00406-372. And you can see on the bottom of that paragraph there, additionally, during May, reports from the KLA became an important source of intelligence and targeting information for TF Hawk. Data from these sources was collated by the Deep Operations Coordination Cell to develop a picture of Yugoslav forces operating in southwestern Kosovo. General, this is yet another indication that this information from the KLA was getting to you, wasn't it?
No, I flew down. I sat with Task Force Hawk. I did the DEET Operation Coordinating Cell, and I demanded that they extract as much information as they could. But you know, when you see these statements in this, I don't remember this RAND report. Maybe they talked to me. I don't know. I don't remember it, and I don't remember reading it. But sure, we were doing everything we could. No doubt about it. But you know, that's different. Trying to extract information from a force like the KLA was a lot different than having an allied force that had a structure, radios, reporting, and all that stuff. At least I thought it was, based on the quality I was told of the targeting.
Yes, and if we can go to page SPOE 00406-412. You said in that last answer that you don't remember if they talked to you.
Oh, well, obviously they did.
There you go. Your Honors, we would like to tender those last three exhibits that were shown to the witness. That would be the Cook briefing, which would be SPOE 00406-592 to 00406-597. The Bacon briefing, which would be SPOE 00406-608 to 00406-620. And the RAND report is quite long, so we would just tender the pages that were shown to the witness, which would be SPOE 00406-266, then page 406-372, and finally this one, page 406-412.
Any objection?
I have no objection in principle, but I'm wondering if the first two exhibits, we need the whole exhibit or can just admit the portions that were shown to the witness.
They're both relatively short briefings. We leave it in the panel's hands if you'd like the entire exhibit or just the pages shown.
Well, for purposes of context, unless there's something offensive in there.
I'm doing the math, like 14 pages and only one was shown, so I'm
Oh, at this point.
Well, the first page of each and a page after that, so
that's
four
fine.
pages shown.
That's fine. That's fine.
Those enumerated exhibits are all admitted.
Thank you, Your Honors. SPOE 00406-592 to SPOE 00406-597, pages SPOE 00406-592 and page SPOE 00406-597 will be admitted with exhibit number P04519, currently classified as public.
And just for the court officer, just to confirm, it's that range, as I understood it, was just agreed to being admitted as the exhibit and not just the two individual pages shown.
That is the court's understanding.
Thank you, Your Honors. Then for the next ERN, in this case, are we admitting only the first page and the page 611 or the entire page?
For that one as well, so it would be 406-608 to 406-620.
That's the point I was making. That's 12 pages, if I understand it. And I'm hoping just to admit whatever was shown to the witness. We haven't had an opportunity to go through 12 pages.
So you're concerned about not knowing what's in the document?
Well, and it hasn't been put to the witness, so I have no problem with what was shown to the witness and asked to comment on, but
It's admitted. You can certainly show it to him.
Thank you, Your Honors. In that case, SPOE 00406-608 to 00406-620 will be assigned exhibit number P04520, currently classified as public. And the last ERN is SPOE 00406-266 to SPOE 00406 3
Yes, if it assists the court officer, for this one, we are only tendering the pages shown because this is quite a long report. I can repeat the pages being tendered. It would be SPOE 00406-266, 406-372, and 406-412, and that's all for this one.
In that case, these 3 pages will be assigned exhibit number P04521, and it's classified as public. Thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you. And this document can now be taken off the screen. General, it's true, isn't it, that the only time you met with anyone from the KLA anywhere during the air campaign was the meeting with Hashim Thaçi, you said in your statement, occurred in probably 1999. Is that right?
That's right.
Where was that meeting?
Well, I remember a meeting in, as I said, at Chevrolet Air Force Base.
Now, there was a meeting at an airfield in March 1999.
Yeah, that's the one.
I'm talking about the meeting after that. You said it was probably April.
Yeah, he may have come to my headquarters. I have a vague recollection of this, but I didn't go back and, I mean, I'm sure I have a record of it in my papers that are locked up at Fort McNair and classified. I just haven't gone back and looked at it. I didn't know what the question was.
Yes, if we can, just to be super clear, put 1D00430, paragraph 23 on the screen. I want to direct you to the exact meeting with Mr. Thaçi I'm talking about, just to make sure that all my subsequent questions are clear.
Interpreters note the speakers are kindly requested to pause between question and answer. Thank you.
And it's paragraph 23. So this meeting, I recall meeting Mr. Thaçi a third time sometime during the campaign, probably in April 1999, to seek his assistance with identifying target locations for NATO airstrikes. In relation to this meeting, do you remember where it was?
I'm pretty sure that was in my headquarters.
And what did you understand Mr. Thaçi's role to be at the time you had this meeting?
He was like a liaison officer. I figured he was out looking for money and support from the Albanian expatriate community.
So did you ask to see him, or did he ask to see you?
I don't remember. I probably asked to see him because I was still looking for help on targeting.
And in the end, you met with Hashim Thaçi because he was one of the KLA's top people, and as Saker, you were meeting with top people.
He was outside the country, outside of Kosovo. He was available to meet. And yeah, he was supposed to be one of the top people.
I first want to confirm the exact date of this meeting. If we could go to SPOE 00405-042 to 00405-042. This is a media article that we found from 28 May 1999. And I just want to show it to you to see if this is the same meeting that we're talking about now. So it says KLA political chief to meet with top NATO officials in Brussels. You see it's dated 28 May 1999. The political leader of the rebel Kosovo Liberation Army, Hashim Thaçi, said he planned to meet Friday in Brussels with NATO Secretary General Javier Solana and the Alliance Commander, General Wesley Clark. Is this the meeting?
No, I don't think so.
So you talk about having only 3 meetings during the air, up until the end of the air campaign, and the third one was probably in April 1999. So what's this one?
I don't know. I don't remember going to this meeting. But then, you know, I have to apologize to the court because I could have spent a long time going back to Fort McNair trying to read everything. I just wasn't aware of what you needed me to know to fulfill my obligation as a witness here. But I don't remember this meeting. I'm sorry.
If we now go to P814_ET.17, and this is from a war archive of news reports by the Kosovo Press. So it says, Prime Minister Thaçi took part in the NATO Council meeting. It says, reporting from Brussels. Yesterday, the Prime Minister of the Provisional Government of Kosovo, Hashim Thaçi, spent the day in Brussels. And this was a report of 29 May 1999. And then you see at the beginning of the second paragraph, Mr. Thaçi also had a meeting with NATO Commander General Wesley Clark, to whom he set out the situation in Kosovo. In these high-level meetings, the Prime Minister of Kosovo requested the continuation and intensification of the NATO attacks on the Serbian military activity in Kosovo. General, is it possible that what you're remembering as the probably April 1999 meeting is in fact this one of 28 May 1999?
You know, I don't think so, but if it's material, may I find a way to check on it?
I think that we can just continue from there, but you actually don't remember then, from what you're saying currently.
Objection, Your Honor. This is asked and answered. The witness has already said this.
Overruled, go ahead.
Didn't finish my question. You don't currently remember whether you met Hashim Thaçi once or twice during the air campaign.
That's correct, but I think we could get an answer to that if it's material.
I want to focus on whatever the meeting was, where you were talking about seeking Hashim Thaçi's assistance for identifying target locations for airstrikes. You'd previously said earlier today that you didn't have direct relations with the KLA. We've also talked about NATO still getting KLA targeting information from other sources. So why would you seek Hashim Thaçi's assistance on targeting?
Because what I've tried to explain is the air campaign was a dynamic process from start to finish. When it began, we had a list of targets that were in Kosovo. They were fixed targets, and they were basically ammunition storage bunkers and barracks that the Serb military was in. And we knew when we struck these that it was a symbolic strike. They were empty. So the question then was, how was the campaign going to proceed? Because of restrictions on satellite observation and transmission of data that were extant in 1999, we had a very limited list of targets before the campaign began. Some 200 targets maybe, and they weren't good targets, and they weren't targets that would have been considered decisive against the government in Belgrade. I had a discussion with Javier Solana about this. My military commander said, oh, we want to strike immediately in Belgrade and turn out the lights like we did against Baghdad. And so Javier and I discussed this, and it wasn't going to be possible. The U.S. Was responsible for the targeting, and they had prioritized targeting against North Korea, Iraq, and Iran at the time. And I was told this by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, I'm not trying to filibuster you. I just want to explain that when we started, we had a very limited list of targets. And it was clear that bombing fixed installations wasn't going to be key in stopping Milosevic's ethnic cleansing. And that's why I established the measures of merit, which were referenced in one of the earlier exhibits. And that measure of merit was to strike the Serb forces. To strike the Serb forces, we needed active, real-time intelligence as best we could. So we had overflight, we had radio intercepts, We had Predator. I brought in a second type of drone, but they were very primitive compared to what's out there now. They didn't show you where they were looking. You had no idea what you were seeing on the screen or where it was. And so we realized we had a real deficit, and we, over the time of the duration of the campaign, we progressively tried to remedy this problem. And that's why I saw Thaçi. That's why I think I saw him in April sometime in my headquarters, not this meeting. If this meeting, I'm sure this meeting occurred, but it didn't make an impression on me, I guess, because I remember asking him earlier and not getting a successful much of an answer.
Thank you, General. And you're not filibustering. This isn't a legislative hearing. It's a formal proceeding. You did know by this time that Mr. Thaçi was focusing on international outreach, right?
Right. Well, I didn't know that. He was the only connection we had.
In paragraph 22 of your statement, when you talk about the meeting in mid-March 1999 at the airfield, you said Thaçi's focus, however, seemed to be on international outreach with contacts in Switzerland and the US. So you knew at that point that he was focusing on international outreach.
That's right.
Given the time sensitivities of targeting that we were talking about earlier today, why would you expected him to know the latest on the KLA and SERP positions?
Well, I didn't expect him to know the latest. I expected him to get information to us and to set up a system to get us the information.
Thank you.
But when I came back to him a second time, he still didn't know anything.
So, I would now like to play a video that we looked briefly at the transcript of earlier. And this is 128928-03_2. And if we could also get the accompanying transcript back on the screen, which is 128928-03-TR-AT-ET, page 2. Now, General, I will have to apologize at the outset for this one. This is an interview that you gave on Albanian television in August 2000. You spoke in English. Your answers were then dubbed into Albanian, so we have subtitles indicating what was said.
Just to orient the witness, the transcript says it was August of 2020, not August of 2000.
Apologies. Thank you, Counsel. It was 1 August 2020. Thank you for the correction. And it was for RTK television. And if we go to page 2 of the transcript, and then we go to the video, the part of the video that I would like to have played is from 2 minutes, 34 seconds to 3 minutes, 41 seconds. And as you'll see, the excerpt played is going to end with a part of this transcript that I showed you previously. The video itself is extracted, but yes, in the extract, it starts at 2:34 to 3:41.
Komandantët tanë atje kanë bërë gjithçka në ndihmë të kosovarëve si dhe administratës së OKB-s, përfshirë edhe liderët që dolën në atë kohë, duke përfshirë këtu edhe zotrin Thaçi. E mbaj mend edhe presidentin Rugova, zotri Haradinajin dhe të tjerët. Pra, jemi përpjekur jo vetëm të rikthejmë normalen, por edhe të mbronim monumentet serbe, manastiret, familjet individuale serbe, gjithçka në përpjekje për të tejkaluar atë periudhë të tmerrshme e të dhëmshme që Kosova kishte përjetuar. Presidenti, atëherë zoti Hashim Thaçi, ishte zëdhënësi i UÇK-s. Me të janë takuar një herë shkurt jashtë selisë së NATO-s në Belgjik. Ai më pati thënë që janë duke mbietuar, që po bënin atë që munden. Thash që është mirë, ne duam që t'ju ndihmojmë. Megjithatë, NATO-ja nuk ka pasur marrëdhënie të drejtë për drejta me UÇK-n. Thjesht nuk kemi marrë raporte nga ta, si dhe nuk kemi pasur se si ta dim se çfarë po ndodhte.
Më shumë se 20
Yes,
vjet pas
and we can
luftës,
stop the
në
video
këtë
there.
intervistë ish komandanti i NATO-s.
General, you said that you met Thaçi once, briefly outside the NATO headquarters in Belgium. Is this the meeting about the targeting discussion you're discussing here?
I think that I'm referring to the time he came to the airfield.
Is there any indication other than your statement where you have publicly acknowledged that you had a discussion with Hashim Thaçi about targeting?
I don't know if there's such a statement, but if there is, you would probably have found it.
And as we discussed earlier, this precedes you saying that NATO did not have direct relations with the KLA. And I put it to you that that remark only makes sense if the meeting with Hashim Thaçi was not about targeting assistance.
Well, I'm not sure what your question is.
Do you agree with that proposition or not?
Well, I think there's two matters of fact here that may be contradictory. I noticed the title of the RAND report was A Disjointed Campaign. And this was the first experience that any of these analysts had ever had of looking at an alliance operation in something like NATO. So maybe it looked disjointed to them. The simple fact was that NATO nations, as Klaus Naumann said, did not want to have relations with the KLA. But everything in this air campaign was dynamic. It changed. What I mean to say is this. Let me give you an example. When this operation began, I was asked, how long would it last? Everybody wanted to know this. So some people, the French, the Spanish, once NATO strikes, Milosevic is certainly to surrender. He can't withstand NATO. But who knew that? So I wasn't going to say that's not true. I was hoping that it would be over in a day. In fact, the morning after the first strike, I called General Oudinich. And I said, now we've struck. I think it's time for you to pull your forces out and let's get on with the agreement that was laid out at Rambouillet. So after 3 or 4 days, it became clear as the Serbs continued their ethnic cleansing. And I went to Secretary General Solana. I said, we have to change the objective of the operation. It's no longer to persuade the Serbs to accept a NATO force in Kosovo that would pacify the country the way we did in Bosnia.
General, I follow you.
So,
and I want to focus on the meeting with Hashim Thaçi.
Everything changed. So, from the time that we started and didn't know how long it was going to last, as I said in my press conference, which I wrote without Pentagon guidance, even though I requested it, I said I think it was the morning of the 25th, with Solana, we're going to attack, attrit, degrade, and ultimately destroy those elements that Milosevic most values.
General, just to cut you off there, you're going well beyond the scope of the question that I asked. We're talking about Hashim Thaçi and the meeting you had with him. If we can now put P524 on the screen. I take your point that you don't remember exactly when the meeting
but
is.
my point is, you have to think of the campaign as a progression. It was the opposite of good military planning. It was a politically driven campaign. Had it been actually a planned military campaign, we would have done it from start to finish. Instead, we fought at each level to increase the pressure on Milosevic.
If the court officer could now please pull up P524. Witness, I take your point that you don't remember exactly when you had this targeting discussion with Hashim Thaçi.
Right.
But it must have happened by 29 May 1999. Is that fair to say?
Yes, yeah, it must have happened by then.
This is an interview with Hashim Thaçi on that date. And if you scroll to the bottom of this page, Hashim Thaçi is asked a question. Is it true that the KLA helps NATO locate targets inside Kosovo? And begins his answer, "It is possible, but I think that NATO already has the information it needs." How could Hashim Thaçi give an answer like that if you had asked him about targeting prior?
He could because he didn't have the information.
The question was, is it true that the KLA helps NATO locate targets inside Kosovo? And he says it is possible. And I put it to you that he couldn't have had a conversation with you about targeting, and this answer would also make sense.
Well, he did have a conversation with me about targeting. He was unable to provide any assistance in targeting. I directed my command to get as much information as they could from however they communicated, whether it was to the Albanian government or directly to these isolated elements in northeastern Albania, to find out what was going on. And, my impression was that Hashim Thaçi was not connected well to this.
In that relation, we can take this article down from the screen, and the meeting I want to focus on now is the meeting that you were discussing yesterday with Hashim Thaçi there and the zone commanders just before the end of the demilitarization period. Was that meeting the only time you saw Hashim Thaçi and the zone commanders in the same place? If it helps, to the best of your recollection.
I'd say to the best of my recollection, probably not, because when I went back in, and we sat down with Mike Jackson and we worked out the agreement, I seem to recall that I'd seen many of these people before.
And I take it from your answers yesterday, you'd seen them before, but you don't remember who these people were.
No. I mean, I didn't have business cards on them. I didn't have the spellings of their names, and they're introducing themselves, and it's just very hard in the midst of that to keep track of who's who.
Yes, and if we could please pull up PO4501 on the screen. Yesterday, and this was at real-time transcript pages 49 to 50, you were shown a page from General Jackson's book by the Thaçi defense where it talks about your engagement with the zone commanders at this meeting. This is actually just before in the book where Jackson is talking about the moments just before your visit. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, it says, "At the 11th hour arrived, the negotiations became extremely tense." So it's just before you arrive. The next page. Jackson then says, "We reached D plus 89. Thaçi turned nasty. Nobody plays games with the KLA, he shouted at me. If you think you can issue directions to us, then you are mistaken and you will regret it." General, did you know about this exchange with Hashim Thaçi and General Jackson shortly before you arrived?
I probably did know about it, and I figured that Jackson had handled it properly.
So you spoke in paragraph 31 of your admitted statement about how Hashim Thaçi's lack of influence over the KLA soldiers was reinforced by him standing off to the side at the conclusion of your meeting. Is that right?
That's right.
But it happened just after this exchange. Isn't it true that Hashim Thaçi had a political authority that was different in kind from the soldiers that you were speaking to?
Well, it seems that that's the case. That does seem to be the case, yeah. And he was speaking politically, and he was making, pronouncements politically. And he had a different vision, as Mike Jackson says in this book, and talking about just reading the previous page on what Cheku was saying. Yes, I mean, as I tried to explain earlier, this was the process. You had a resistance organization that had, with NATO support, felt that it had run the Serbs out. It then wanted a rightful place in the government of Kosovo in the future. And what NATO was saying is, hey, wait a minute, you got to be disarmed and you're going away. And what I did when I came down there was assure them that they could still maintain an association, but it wouldn't be a military association. And that was what became the Kosovo Protective Force. Now, those are the major muscle movements. And what we're talking about here is the sort of the details of how this went down. And yeah, there was a lot of friction, a lot of anger, and a lot of statements expressed.
It's true, isn't it, that a key part of your remarks to the zone commanders was to emphasize how the military must be subject to a civil authority?
Yeah.
And during your military career, you were subordinate to the President of the United States, who was the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
And the Secretary of Defense.
Do you know if the KLA had identified anyone as its Commander-in-Chief at this time?
No, I didn't. I didn't think of it that way, and the way I looked at it is Cheku was in charge. That's how he presented himself.
General, these inferences that you make throughout your evidence on authority, command, influence, they all led to a conclusion in paragraph 52 of your statement that you do not believe it would be just to attribute the misconduct of others to Hashim Thaçi. That's what you said, right?
That's right.
I put it to you that you don't know enough about what the KLA was doing throughout the war to know if the charges he faces in this court stand or not. What do you say to that?
Well, that's a charge that is only partially relevant to the proceedings of the court. Because as a strategic commander, no, I didn't have the ability to do the research that you've done. However, from my experience with it, and what I saw was he was not effectively acting as a commander-in-chief in which everybody obeyed his orders. And I think that's the crux of the case here. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but all of the impressions that I had at the time, and maybe this was an elaborate deception plan on the part of Mr. Thaçi or others, this was a group of people who came together over a period of time to try to defend their population against Serb ethnic cleansing. Thaçi just happened to be the most articulate and presentable of the people, and he was an ambitious man from the start, and he worked his way up. But to have control, no way that I could see, because these elements didn't have the kind of structure that a normal organization would have. They were individual groups of people fighting for their survival, no matter what the paper might say. And why do I say this? Because if you look at relevant historical examples, and the best researched historical example is actually the American Revolution.
General, we're not talking about the American Revolution right now. And we're not talking about anything other than whether you know if the charges he faces stand or not. What is your answer to that question?
Charges don't stand.
Thank you. If we could now go back to the video that we were showing earlier, 128928-03_2, and this would be ERN 128928-03-TR-AT-ET, page 1. And in a moment, I'll ask for the 22-second mark to the 1 minute, 4-second mark be played. General, I want to go back to this RTK interview. And I'm grateful for a moment, because I'm grateful for the correction of counsel earlier, because the date of this interview is significant. 1 August 2020 was just over a month after the indictment was first publicly released in this case. And you're being asked about it in the excerpt that I'm about to play now.
I'm going to object to the mischaracterization. It is not correct that the indictment was released by that date.
The announcement of it was released.
Overruled. That was the question that was stated.
Well, can I just say, Mr. President, if I can clarify? I also don't believe the indictment was even confirmed by that point, so I don't know how it could have been announced to have been released.
I can direct counsel to the press release of 24 June 2020, but that is the basis of my question.
It's
If we could ask the court officer to please play the extra.
E vërteta është që presioni ndaj Kosovës si dhe përpjekjet e ndryshme për të nënçmuar Kosovën nuk janë ndalur kurrë. Që nga koha kur rusët kishin marrë aeroportin e Prishtinës, që prej asaj mësymje kur kishin uzurpuar një sektor të vetin diku nga ana lindore e Kosovës, e deri tek obstruksione diplomatike, nuk ka pasur kurrë ndalesë të përpjekjeve për të vënë pengesa në rrugën e Kosovës drejt përparimit. Pra është krejtësisht normale të pritën përpjekje të tilla që bëhen përmes kanaleve të ndryshme. Tani sa i përket përmbajtjes së këtyre akuzave, nëse ato qëndrojnë apo jo, nuk e kam iden. Shihet megjithatë një lloj vazhdimësie e aktiviteteve që është mjaft e dukshme edhe 20 vjet më pas.
Thank you.
Njeriu që udhëhoqi
You can
operacionin e
pause
NATO
there. Witness, that's what you said about this court and these charges. You said in 2020 you had no idea if these charges against Hashim Thaçi stand or not, and you still don't know. Do you?
Well, actually, I didn't know what the charges were when I made that statement. The charges I remembered thinking about were the charges of something to do with organ selling. And I think it was in the 2007-2008 period that someone had charged that the KLA was harvesting organs and so forth. And so I consider that likely to be some kind of disinformation. So I don't remember exactly when I finally realized what these charges were, but I'm pretty sure that when I made that statement, I had not read the charge sheet. In fact, I was asked by you yesterday, had I read these charge sheets? And I don't remember having read them until I read it last night.
So, before last night, you had not been specifically informed of the charges, you'd not read the indictment or the pretrial briefs. That's what you
right.
said yesterday.
That's right. I did not get any information from Mike Durkee or John Duncan or any of these other people about what they testified on. So I had no idea, how much research I needed to do to be able to properly answer your questions.
Thank you, General. You have answered my questions. And, Your Honor, at this point, we would now tender this video and its accompanying transcript. I can give the ERN again if it assists.
I have the ERN. Any objection to the
no.
ERN 128928-03-TR-AT is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honors. It will be assigned exhibit number P04522, and it's currently classified as confidential.
Yes, so it can be public, and just to be clear as to the tender, it would be the video and the Albanian and English transcripts of the video.
The English and Albanian translations are included, and it is now reclassified as public.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, General. No further questions.
Do you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
General, while we have this on the screen, you I believe, noted that at this point in August, it still wasn't clear what the charges actually were, correct?
Right.
And you mentioned in your answer that you had heard that the allegations were related to organ trafficking, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you had originally understood this case to be about in August of 2020, about organ trafficking?
I assumed it was finally someone had come up with some concrete evidence about it.
And you linked the allegations of organ harvesting to a disinformation campaign.
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that disinformation, why you think it was a disinformation campaign, the organ harvesting issues?
I thought
Objection irrelevant.
No,
You went directly to his opinion that he expressed.
Objections overruled. Go ahead.
I thought it was a ridiculous suggestion that in the middle of this air campaign, somehow organs would be harvested and sold to someone. It didn't make any sense. It was a kind of prejudicial charges that reeked of disinformation.
Who did you think was launching a disinformation campaign?
The same people that gave me the book in the fall of 1998 that identified the KLA as Chechens.
And that would be whom?
That would be the Russians.
Thank you, General. Now, what I had planned for redirect, I want to start just with a question of my own curiosity that you can help us with. You were the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe. The acronym has been now pronounced 3 different ways in this court, and I would like you to tell us how to pronounce that acronym.
SACEUR.
SACEUR, thank you. Okay. I'd like to start by asking you this question. The conclusion of the cross-examination asked you about your basis of knowledge for your conclusion that you don't think Mr. Thaçi should be responsible for the actions of others. You've now been cross-examined by the prosecutor for 4 hours. Have you seen any order from Mr. Thaçi to anyone?
I've not.
Okay. Did the prosecutor show you any reports that were issued by any subordinates to Mr. Thaçi?
They did not.
Okay. Did you see anything that the prosecutor showed you in cross-examination which would indicate to you that he in fact might have been a military commander?
I did not.
Did anything that the prosecutor showed you in cross-examination lead you to question your conclusion as to whether Mr. Thaçi should bear responsibility for the actions of others?
It did not.
Thank you. You mentioned 2 people just now, John Duncan and Mike Durkee. Did they report to you?
Oh, yes, they did.
If they had met with zone commanders on the ground, would they have reported that to you?
Well, if they had met with them during the conflict, there would have been no way to do that.
I mean, I'm talking about, I should correct, after 1244, if they went to Kosovo and had meetings with zone commanders, would that have been information that they would have reported to you one way or another?
Yes, but it wouldn't have been significant information. I wouldn't have tagged it because I didn't, I just assumed there were people that were considered subordinates of whoever was in charge of trying to make this thing work. But the fact that there were specific called zone commanders or what their names were, it wasn't relevant at my level of command.
Now, the impressions that they made on the ground in their meetings, did they forward those impressions to you?
Yes.
And did you form your conclusions on the basis of the information that was provided to you by your subordinates, including people like John Duncan and Mike Durkee?
I did.
Okay. You were asked several questions, and there was an attempt for you to draw a comparison in terms of command and control with whether Mike Jackson could simply disregard one of your orders, and that's just the way things go in command. Sometimes they disagree with you. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions here.
But I'm glad you brought this up, and can I?
Well, I'm going to give you plenty of opportunity. Believe me, you'll have plenty of rope to tell us what the distinctions are here. What I was trying to say was, let's talk about, see if we're comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges. Okay? Let's start here. Within the United States Army, if General Wesley Clark, a 4-star general, issues an order to a subordinate and he says to you, General Clark, I don't feel like implementing your order, what steps do you take?
I'd probably ask him why. I mean, as opposed to let me just explain something to the court. In the Russian-Soviet military system, when an order is given, if you don't execute it according to the doctrine, you're a traitor. And so you're sabotaging the operation. That's the way the Soviet military doctrine emerged. Ours is different. When we give an order for an operation, it's normally passed down and the subordinate commanders look at it and they analyze it, and they might well come back and say, I can't do that. Said, you've given me a river, I need more engineer support to cross a river. I need more artillery. In the Soviet command and control system, this would have been considered sabotaging the plan of the higher headquarters by asking for resources that weren't allocated to you. In the American way, we have a more collaborative planning process. Now, that's simply the fact. And so when, okay, so let's stop there and go ahead with your
Okay.
next question.
But I'm talking about, we get to the scenario where you've heard all the arguments, all the contrary arguments, et cetera, and now you've made the final decision.
Yeah.
You're going to, after the collaboration, you've had to make the call.
Yeah.
And still, a subordinate says he's going to disobey your order.
Well, then he's out.
What does that mean?
Well, I've got to remove him from command.
Got it. So that's within the United States Army. Now, in a NATO setting, and in this particular case, K4, can you tell us what the operational plan was and whether each contingent country retained any command over its own forces with respect to the NATO operational command,
Okay,
plan?
you're talking about K4 after the end of the air campaign.
Correct.
Okay, always within NATO, command remains with the parent country. So removing officers, disciplining officers, rewarding officers, whatever. Operational control is given to NATO. But if the commander of the country's detachment objects to the NATO order, he, of course, has the right to go back to his own channel of command.
And I'm told I was speaking too fast, so I'm going to take a pause for a second, General. Now, you were asked questions by the prosecutor about General Mike Jackson and the Pristina airfield, et cetera.
Right.
Do I understand your answer correctly that in a NATO context, General Jackson had the ability to follow his own chain of command on that issue?
Yeah, on any issue.
Okay. And when I say his own chain of command, I mean to the British.
To the British, absolutely. He had the right to appeal to the British on any of these issues.
Thank you.
And of course, I had the right to object. But I didn't have the right to fire him or discipline him. It was a matter of professional military judgment.
So when we talk about command and control within a nation's army, not in a multinational force, is it necessary to have effective command and control that the superior commander has the ability to replace the subordinate commander if he disobeys an order?
Yes, if you have real command and control, that's correct.
Okay.
Now, can I just say that I want to make clear that that's not usually the prerogative of the immediate superior. It might get moved 2 or 3 levels up the chain of command.
Okay, understood. Now, you were asked some questions about intelligence and intelligence failures. Do you recall being asked that by the prosecutor yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. Your own conclusions about Kosovo, they were based on intelligence you received? Is that correct?
Correct.
Were they also based on your own personal trips to Kosovo?
Yes.
You say in your statement that they were based also on that meeting you attended in September with Mr. Thaçi and the zone commanders. Is that
Yes.
correct? Would they have also been based on the observations that Mr. Durkee and Mr. Duncan were reporting to you?
Yes.
General Jackson, also, would he have been informing you about what he was seeing?
He would have.
Did General Jackson indicate to you that he wanted zone commanders to be present at JIC meetings?
I don't recall specifically that statement.
Okay. If we could please have on the screen Exhibit P02516. You were asked a series of questions about the possibility of renewed hostilities with Serbia. And I want to ask you if General Jackson reported to you what he's recorded as saying here. And if we could go to PDF page 22, please. this is testimony that General Jackson gave in 2016 in the British courts. And if we could, yeah, if you look in about the 6th line down, the lines are numbered on the left-hand column. Sorry, if we could scroll up, please. Yes, right, that top paragraph. He says, leaving aside what I thought was quite a remote possibility, but it was not zero, of the Serbs mounting a counterattack. Was General Jackson reporting to you also that he felt it was a remote possibility, but it wasn't zero of the Serbs mounting a counterattack?
Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization. However, that was his opinion, and I had a somewhat different set of responsibilities. So I took more seriously the threat that the Serbs might mount an attack.
Yes, but he was giving you this information, and it informed your own conclusions about the lack of a likelihood of a Serb counterattack.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. While we're on this document, if we could go to PDF page 16, please. And I would like to ask you if General Jackson also reported to you sentiments that he expresses here. If we could go to, yes, that line, beginning at line 4. The question he's asked is, would you agree that were targets of the KLA? He says, yes, I had no evidence myself that, as I think you are inferring, forgive me if I have got this wrong, that the KLA institutionally, by policy if you wish, were committing terrorist acts against whomever. I am not saying that individuals did not do this, but I have no evidence that this was KLA policy.
That's what Jackson told me, yeah.
Okay. And if we could go to PDF page 21, please. He's asked on cross-examination, down on the bottom, towards the bottom, please. Beginning at line 13. Were you alive to what you might need to do to prevent the KLA, in part, if not in whole, conducting themselves like that? His answer, there is a lot in that question. Then he is asked, so I am sorry, there is, but I think it may be, and he says, General Jackson, I say, I have no evidence that institutionally the KLA had adopted a policy of ethnic cleansing of the remaining Serbs. Did General Jackson report those sentiments to you in real time in the summer of 1999?
He did, but I want to go to line 20 there and that answer, because this is what I have been trying to say in a perhaps less eloquent way over the last 2 days.
Yes, well, let me read it out then. He also goes on and says, I know, 99% know, that individual members of the KLA were frankly out of control. Is that what he was reporting to you, and that led to your assessment that there was no command and control of the
Yes.
KLA?
Yes.
Thank you. If we can go to PDF page 22, please. At the bottom, please. He's asked about something called the Marty Report. Are you familiar with the Marty Report, General?
No.
Okay. He's asked, I just want to concentrate on the KLA, and so I'm just focusing on the findings of Senator Marty. And he answers, you are beginning to imply that this was a policy of the KLA. If we go to the next page, please. And I cannot say that I agree with you on that. Again, is that consistent with what General Jackson was reporting to you about a lack of a KLA policy
Yes.
to commit crimes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, is the policy of the KLA to cleanse out every single Serb is what's exactly written.
Fine. Is that what's being reported to you?
Yes, that it wasn't a KLA policy. But referring to the previous page, sure, as I try to, I've said this 10 times to the court, I think, look, this is a terrible situation for these people who were fearing for their lives. They were angry. There was vengeance taken, of course. And Jackson put it very clearly there about the Balkan sentiment of an eye for an eye. This is not from the, it's not post-Protestant Reformation Christianity.
Just 1 second. General, you were shown some testimony before the ICTY by General Klaus Neumann. Do you recall? Naumann, I apologize. Klaus Naumann, before the ICTY. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to show you portions that were not shown to you by the prosecutor. So if we could please have SPOE 0040 6441 to 0040 6504. And I just wanted to show them to you because you may have been seemingly misled by not being shown this portion. If we could go to page SPOE 0040 6464, please. Yes, and if we go to line 6 at the bottom, you're asked here, so General, if I, or so not you, I'm sorry, General Naumann. So General, if I understand then, part of the problem, as you see it, is because NATO had earlier declared KLA a terrorist group. By NATO's own rules then, you couldn't negotiate with them or have discussions with them. And then his answer is, that's correct. We had to ask nations, individual nations, to contact them. So General Naumann there is not saying that there was no contact. He, as I understand it, is saying it didn't go through NATO, it went through the individual NATO member states. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if we can go back one page in this document, and this is where the prosecutor stopped the quote. And if we can scroll down to line 19, if we could scroll up again, sorry, right there. This is the portion that was read out. That, Your Honor, was our Achilles heel. And if we go down to line 6, he continued, and it was not read out to you, we had simply no instrument to rein in the KLA. We had to do it. We tried to do it by asking the one or the other NATO nation to take advantage of contacts which may exist. But the instrument which we used in the case of Yugoslavia, namely to threaten military action, was not applicable to the Kosovars. So again, my question to you is it the case that, in fact, there was contact, but it went through other NATO nations? Is he right there?
Yes, there was. Sure, there was contact, of course.
Okay, thank you. Now, you were shown an excerpt from General Reinhardt's diary from March of 2000. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'd like to show you the date of that entry in General Reinhardt's diary is 10 March 2000. And I'd like to show you an article in the New York Times reporting on that event from the 11th of March 2000. And if we could please have on the screen 1D00181 from the new Q released by the Thaçi defense. And you'll see there, NATO chief in Kosovo fears a cross-border insurgency. And then the first two paragraphs say the commander of peacekeeping troops in Kosovo, with the former political leader of the disbanded Kosovo Liberation Army beside him, vowed today to stop any insurgency mounted from Kosovo into Serbia. The warning came at a joint news conference when the commander, General Klaus Reinhardt, was joined by Hashim Thaçi, the Albanian leader. The appearance, which Mr. Thaçi was urged to make by General Wesley K. Clark, NATO's supreme commander, was an effort to send a political message to the population of Kosovo and beyond into Serbia. And if we could scroll down to see, yeah. on the next page, please, sorry. You can scroll down. Yes, Mr. Thaçi, that paragraph. It says, Mr. Thaçi and leaders of the Kosovo Protection Corps, the civilian structure that has replaced the Liberation Army, are apparently already listening and are moving to take the appropriate public stance. In an interview this week, just after a meeting in Kosovo with General Clark, Mr. Thaçi clearly stated that the Preševo Valley, long a majority Albanian area and once part of Kosovo, was not his concern. I respect the right of the Albanians in Preševo. They should have the rights of democratic citizens. But in Kosovo, we have different circumstances, and we now have a different approach to the region, he said. Now, as the president of a political party in Kosovo, my concerns only cover the territory of Kosovo. One more sentence. He stressed that Albanians did not want violence. More than anyone else in the region, Albanians know what violence means. Just one second,
Counsel,
General.
if I could just
It's for the interpreters. I'll ask the question, and then you feel free to expound as you need to, General. My question to you is, you're mentioned in the first two paragraphs of this New York Times article as someone who encouraged Mr. Thaçi to deliver a political message. Is what he is reported as saying here consistent with the message you wanted him to deliver?
what he says there is consistent, but maybe he didn't say the right thing with Klaus Reinhardt.
Okay.
But I come down to the last sentence, which is irrelevant to the whole set of issues that are being raised here. Ramush Haradnai, a powerful commander of the former Kosovo Liberation Army, showed a more independent mind.
We can
Now,
scroll. Let me
This
scroll.
is precisely my impression and what drives my impression of the command and control nature that was present in the KLA. These were strong personalities, men who were risking their lives, whose families depended on their decisions. They weren't easily subordinated. There wasn't a regular chain of command. They were fighting for their lives up through the end of the air campaign, and they carried that attitude forward into the post-air campaign period. That's why Jackson had a hard time with them. That's why there was still revenge taken. That's why individual elements may have conducted violent operations against the Serbs. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, General.
Yeah.
General, last week, Ambassador Christopher Hill testified that the KLA was never designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the United States. Is that consistent with your understanding?
That's what I said earlier. After someone had made that statement, then it was clarified and rebutted by the United States.
Thank you. Sorry, Your Honor, I need 1 second. Yes, Mr. President, I'm just being told that at transcript page 101, line 11, I believe in the first sentence, I'll just ask the witness to repeat, because I think we have the wrong.
That's fine.
Yeah. General, you brought up the issue of the reference to Ramush Haradinaj in the New York Times article, and you're recorded on the transcript as saying, but I came down to the last sentence, which is irrelevant to the whole set of issues that are being raised here. Did you mean to say relevant or
Yes.
irrelevant?
If I said irrelevant, I didn't mean to say irrelevant.
He
So-
said relevant.
Thank
He
you.
said relevant.
I'm just confirming. Thank you. General Clark, I'd like to show you portions of your book that have been shown to you by the prosecutor. If we could please have exhibit, or sorry, let me just double check. Okay. If I could please have page DHT 11103 to DHT 11632, please, on the screen. And this is, again, your book, Waging Modern War. And you were shown DHT 11473. If we could take a look at that. And I just, I'm going to ask you a question to help us interpret the sentence that was shown to you. So at the very top, you were read the second sentence, which says, Hawk was in direct contact with the Albanian army who, in turn, were monitoring the KLA, and many targets were being passed to the CAOC. My question to you is this sentence saying that it's the Albanian army who is passing along targeting information after monitoring the KLA, or is it saying that the KLA is passing along targeting information through the Albanian army?
You know, it was probably a little of both. But they were getting, they had direct contact at the airfield in Tirana with the Albanian army. We didn't have any way of directly ourselves monitoring the KLA, not in Task Force Hawk.
I guess my question is, it's unclear, is the Albanian army, to your understanding, being given information by the KLA, or is it that they're surveilling the KLA and then reporting it back to you?
The sentence is ambiguous because that's the way it was.
Okay.
It wasn't clear. You know, the events, as I try to explain, this came together very, very quickly near the end of the campaign. During the time we were also negotiating, Mike Jackson was trying to negotiate an end to this. I was trying to bring the B-52s in on Mount Pastrick to make sure there was no backsliding by Milosevic on his willingness to resolve the issue. And I think information was flowing more and more readily. But as I try to explain, what was present at the end of the campaign wasn't there 78 days earlier.
Understood. And within this book, if we could go to another page, DHT 11419, please. Which, for the record, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Just 1 second, please. Yes, Mr. Court Officer, could we please have DHT 11419, please, on the screen? And I'd like to show the sentence that begins, meanwhile, when asked. If we go down, please. I don't see it on, is this 11419? Yes. Sorry.
If it assists counsel, I believe this is one of the pages that was tendered through the bar table and for which we have no objection, if that matters.
Thank you. Yeah, this is actually the right page. The paragraph that begins, we had tried to set up a system to use reports from the Kosovo Liberation Army to help us determine which villages were clear of Kosovars. The idea was that the KLA could tell us through intermediaries whether certain villages were unoccupied. We soon discovered that this method wasn't reliable. The KLA's information might be old, or the Serbs could have infiltrated their communications, or perhaps it wasn't really as accurate as we needed. I had suggested the system, but quickly became disenchanted. We would have to rely primarily on unmanned aerial vehicles, real-time TV, to help us avoid harming civilians, and we'd have to be very wary of striking villages. Now, General, is that consistent with your assessment of the quality of the information you were receiving from the KLA?
Yes, it is.
And did this impact at all your assessment of command and control in the KLA?
Yes, it did.
And
yes.
why is that?
Because there simply wasn't an effective way of getting information from the battlefield back up to the chain of command to us.
Thank you.
We got spots of information. It might or might not have been reliable. And as I indicated earlier, as the campaign progressed and as this offensive focused on the Mount Patrick region, then it was easier to get the information because there was more direct physical contact. But in the areas when we're trying to serve forces elsewhere, out in Drenica and further Jelani and elsewhere, there were KLA people out there, I'm sure. I don't know who they were. We knew there were friendlies out there. We knew there were enemies. I was down on the Combined Air Operations Center one day looking at the Predator feed. We could see a tank backing into wood lines by a lake with the road nearby. We had a A-10 ahead up overhead, and we tried to explain to the pilot what we were seeing. It was impossible. And so we were really betwixt and between. That's why we kept trying to encourage something from the KLA, but it didn't become halfway reliable until the last 2 or 3 days when they were in Mount Patrick. To get that information out of the areas that are 10, 20, 40 kilometers deep, it wasn't coming to us.
Thank
it
you,
just
General.
wasn't coming.
Thank you, General. I note the time, Mr. President.
How much more do you have?
I just want to consult with my client. I may be finished, actually, but I just want to have an opportunity to ask him if he has anything to add.
We can wait and let you finish up now if you want, or if you need a short break.
I'll talk to him right now. But in the meantime, I'll tender the page that I just put to the General.
Which one, 419?
Yes. And I understand there's no
Any
objection.
objection to 419?
None, as I understood the previous proposal, this would then be added to P04514.
Yes.
DHT 11419 is admitted and will be added to the existing exhibit.
And the existing exhibit is P04514, currently classified as public. Thank you, Your Honors.
General Clark, thank you very much. Mr. President, that concludes the redirect examination.
Thank you. Anything? Judge Gainer, anything? General, you'll be happy to know you're finished with us now. The last question has been asked. You will be released and may leave the courtroom. We thank you for being with us, for sharing your information with us, and you can leave with the court attendant now.
Well, thank you very much, but I never got a chance to, you promised me I could say something.
You've been saying quite a bit.
Well, can I just take 2 minutes and say this from my perspective?
You understand the problem is then nobody is going to be able to cross-examine you.
I'm not going to say anything that's cross-examinable. I'm just going to try to put this in perspective, okay? I've mentioned the American Revolution several times. We're in an era in this age right now where there are major forces contending to impact governance. Since World War II, we've tried to establish a rules-based international system. That rules-based international system has worked to some extent. It's been shaky to some extent. And after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the opening of Eastern Europe, Yugoslavia came apart. And the people in Yugoslavia sought the same freedoms that they saw people enjoying elsewhere in the West. This rollback of traditional Habsburg monarchy, Russian monarchy domain is continuing with the war in Ukraine today. And the issue that's here in this trial, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody or the proceedings, because I think the proceedings are important, but there's a line that's crossed somewhere in terms of law and order versus standing up for your individual human rights as a person. And that line was crossed by the KLA somewhere in the early 1990s when they simply rejected Serb repression and did their best to resist it. And so at that point, they aren't terrorists, despite the fact that when I went to see the Serb generals, they said they were terrorists. At that point, they're not terrorists. They're fighting against a regime which is an unjust, immoral, illegal regime which deserved to be replaced. Today, the same effort is going on in Ukraine, and it may go on further. And I think this does present profound challenges in jurisprudence, because at one point, the Baader-Meinhof gangs are in Germany. I'm sure they would have liked to have changed the German government. They were ruled as terrorists. We had a democratic government in Germany. And here you have people fighting for their own freedom. And so somehow the laws and procedures of civilized society have to accommodate the needs of people for their own personal freedom, liberty, and dignity. This is a revolution that started in the United States, and that's why I've referred to it several times. And those American patriots in 1775, 1774 were considered terrorists by the very British who are American allies today. And yet America became a great country and forced this in. So I think we have to, as we go through these proceedings, and whether this goes forward or whether there's Ukrainian proceedings or whatever, I think we have to understand that there's an application for criminal laws and criminal liability, and there are higher strategic issues that sometimes override what individual responsibilities and capabilities are. So I thank you for letting me explain that. That's my view and how I've looked at this trial. And I stand by my previous conviction that Hashim Thaçi is not responsible for what happened there in the sense of individual actions of revenge and violence.
Thank you, General Clark.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Ms. Gerhardt-Serna, thank you very much for being with us again. It's good to see you, and you may leave now if you wish as well. The rest of this gets pretty boring. Well, maybe all of it. We have a status conference scheduled tomorrow. We had thought we would still be hearing him tomorrow, so we'll schedule it for 2 o'clock, and I don't think it would take more than 1 hour. So tomorrow, yes.
I'm going to just ask if there's, if we can do it earlier. I think some of us would like to do it earlier, but if it's 2 o'clock, then we'll be ready.
It's going to have to be 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, thank you all very much. Oh, yes, Mr. Ellis.
Your Honor, I haven't raised it with him yet, but if Mr. Kwasniczy and the other accused wish to follow from the DU for the status conference. I apologize, I'm losing my voice. I was just raising the possibility that Mr. Kwasniczy might wish to follow the status conference from the DU rather than in court. I haven't discussed it yet.
Any of the accused that want to watch from court, from the facility is perfectly all right with us. We have no objection.
Thank you.
So we'll see you tomorrow at 2.
All rise.